KXVS Radio. I will discuss relevant issues affecting animals and pet owners today, how to avoid common problems, and how to extend the quality of life for your cherished companions. As a community advocate, I will also discuss important social issues that affect our city. I plan to showcase organizations and heroes who are doing amazing things to help others. Remember to tune in every Tuesday morning at 10, starting soon.
This is Barbara Berrigan-Perea with Delta Flows, a radio show by the Voice of Stockton and Restore the Delta. This is the weekly radio show where we discuss everything Delta related: the environment, water management, water quality, farming, history and culture, public events, recreation, Delta food, and the arts. Tune into Delta Flows on KXVS, the Voice of Stockton, streaming live on Facebook and YouTube at KXVS Radio.
KXVS 92.1 on Zoom. KXVS.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS, the Voice of Stockton, or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
This is KXVS, the Voice of Stockton, and it's time for Connections, Peace, and Justice Radio with your host, Bruce Giudici.
Good evening. Today we are going to be discussing issues that concern the environmental community, and we're going to be talking about climate change and habitat, and we're fortunate today to have Dick Abood and Margo Praus from the Sierra Club, and Sierra Club is celebrating its,
125th anniversary.
Wonderful. So in celebration of that, we're looking at an environmental picture right now, which is sort of in flux and is in transition. But locally and statewide, we have some reason to be sort of cheered, because California has taken a lead in a lot of environmental work, and the city of Stockton looks like it is looking at smart growth as something that is something to embrace, and so that's a very positive thing that we can build on going into 2018. So Dick, we were going to talk first about the most local stuff, and then sort of broaden out and take a look and see how that impacts the state and national and even international environmental scene. So what has the Sierra Club done in recent years that has impacted the general plan and the way that Stockton is going to be developing in the next 10 or 20 years?
Well, Bruce, that's a really good question, because the Sierra Club sort of combined with Campaign for Common Ground, right, which is a local organization pretty much formed for the purposes of land use issues. Yeah. And many of our members are in both. And with that collaboration, we have been really active in the current general plan process. We were actually involved in the prior one, which wasn't too successful back in 2006, which of course the emphasis was on sprawl, village concepts.
Was that the one that got tossed out by Governor Brown? Or?
It never got tossed out at all, but there was a 2006 Assembly Bill, 32 law, became law, which was the Global Warming Solutions Act. Right. And that triggered the Sierra Club to bring a lawsuit, and then Attorney General Jerry Brown joined in the lawsuit, and we got the city to settle. And
that was way before the current administration. That was absolutely a long time ago.
Right, 2008. Yeah. The settlement agreement was in 2008, but by then we had this disastrous general plan in place.
And then a major recession that pretty much put a lot of development on hold. In any case, it
Very good point.
Yeah, the environment wasn't really the thing that was going to block sprawl. It was pretty much houses that were going down to I mean, really low values. I mean, it's what, $25,000-$50,000 for a home or something in Stockton.
The housing market collapsed. The village concept, and they had this plan for about 100,000 homes scattered among about 12 villages surrounding the city of Stockton, which would have housed probably 300,000 people. They were projecting growth of Stockton of over 600,000 by 2040, I think.
Yeah, I remember the Stewart the ranch down in Lathrop, and they were just mapping out all these spaces for Lathrop properties.
But you hit it. Probably the best thing that ever happened was the recession in terms of stopping.
Definitely slowed things
the growth, slowing it down, and the Sierra Club's settlement agreement required that the city develop a climate action plan because the sprawl, of course, we're very concerned about the air quality here, and global warming
and water quality, and just in general our impact, quality of life,
Yes, and in fact, the city was sinking several wells clear to the east, off their eastern border. Because there's not potable water in the west. So they're sucking water. I happen to live in Murata. They're taking our water supply, our water table down rapidly.
In the middle of a drought.
And no surface water. At the time, they didn't have surface water rights. Well, they did legally, but they didn't have any water.
It was the pipe from New Melones to Stockton East, right? I mean, they had that. They spent money on that pipe, but there wasn't any water in the lake to.
So we're just drawing surface water. I mean,
drawing down the groundwater.
Drawing down the groundwater,
which is a problem up and down the valley, really.
Yeah, and the lower you draw groundwater, of course, the more nitrates, the more contaminants you run into, and the safety of the water. And also, not to mention the quantity of the water.
Also, it's like you're mining. I mean, you're taking stuff out that's not being replaced very quickly.
Right.
So anyway, so that water supply was being depleted, and so development pretty much stopped.
Well, the development was less about water and less about air and more about recession and money and exactly.
That's right.
And they quit building. And so but then, as you know, the housing industry is back. And
pushing again.
Yeah. And so our concern, the city, that was a 2035 general plan back in 2006. So the settlement agreement slowed everything down. The city had to conform, had to start looking at away from sprawl because they had to reduce greenhouse gases
because that was part of government or then Attorney General's mandate, it seemed, or a settlement, it seemed.
And the requirement is by 2020 it's supposed to be down to 1990 levels according to the settlement agreement. They haven't even started yet. It's 2018 in about 10 days, and they haven't started yet. I mean, they do have a climate action plan. They do have a climate action plan committee, which we're not sure is doing anything yet, and there's other requirements, of course, that go along with the settlement agreement. But we're a long way from seeing any action on the settlement agreement, which was all supposed to be done years and years ago.
Are there any penalties for not adhering to it?
Not that we've
heard of. Right.
Well,
the thing is that as soon as it gets close, they'll just kick the can down the road and just say, oh, 20. If you say 2020, maybe 2025.
Yeah. What's a few years?
Yeah, it's more of a guideline than a rule, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, we with some positives here. The 2040 general city went back to the drawing board to the 2040 general plan, and to their credit, I mean, they went away from the sprawl concept to infill, and it's something we really push. The Sierra Club and Common Ground is push for infill. Resources into existing neighborhoods in Stockton who were totally disenfranchised with the village concept. And everything was looking super. They adopted what they call Alternative C. At the last second, at the last city council meeting, when
how long ago was
this? This was, trying to remember, probably about a year now. And one of the council people said, one of our lines in the sand was 8 Mile Road in terms of growth. And we wanted a green belt. Everybody wants a green belt. They had several workshops throughout the city, and everybody was unanimous. All the people wanted infill, wanted the line drawn at 8 Mile
Right.
and wanted a green belt between 8
Low
Mile
down.
and Armstrong at
Okay,
least. And that was the city council went along with that. At the last second, one of the city council members said, you know, we need to be careful about just drawing a line at 8 Mile, that there might be some great business that could come into Stockton, and we have to, like Tesla, who we need to accommodate. And so we need to have the flexibility.
There's no land down by the airport, right?
Well, exactly. That was our thoughts. Like, don't we have an industrial park now down there?
Right.
But obviously, the developers had worked their way in
that's right.
into this, and so that sort of threw us.
So did that have to go through a planning department? I mean, a planning committee or something?
They are writing. The planning commission is now writing language that will, if you will, allow for a super business, some economy, some business that will jar the Stockton economy and take it out to another dimension. So if a business like that comes along, that's going to be an excuse to go into. But our big
like
fear,
if Santa Claus relocates to North Stockton instead of North Pole.
Well, they were dropping things like names like Tesla and the UCs, UC,
sure.
but I think they really meant a USC. I mean, I'm sorry, a CSU.
CSU,
a
right,
CSU,
right.
but not a University of California.
No.
But they're hedging. They're keeping their options open. Our fear is maybe we can go along with that if that business couldn't be put somewhere like you say, by the airport.
Yeah, like by the airport.
Which seemed to make sense to us.
Yeah.
Our fear is that could open the door for housing development.
Of course.
So
well,
we're not out of the woods. I mean, we're very positive about the city council, the way they think now about limiting sprawl and going for infill. And they are concerned. I mean, we couch this in legitimate terms about the environmental effect and the greenhouse gas effect of vehicle miles driven and
just congestion and sprawl.
And sprawl. And the loss of ag land.
Right.
Water depletion.
That's right. I mean, Stockton is built on some really good agricultural land and well-drained soils.
Some of the best soil in the country.
And if not the world. And in terms of the growing season, and it's just a sin to pave it. And so, already we do have developable land, as you were saying, down by the airport, and so it just seems that there's always this. Well, you never know whether or not we can really put a toxic waste dump next to your school. It might be, we might make a lot of money doing that. And so, who knows, in terms of drilling oil in a national monument, we really need to have that sort of, the Arctic refuge. We just have to have that as something in our hip pocket, just in case, we run out of oil.
Right. And we don't want to look at alternative energy sources.
Of course not.
No,
of course not, because those are so unfeasible. I mean, you might as well just, freeze in the dark. So anyway, that's, it's crazy talk. But anyway, so. This council, to its credit, has embraced has stopped the sprawl, and has talked about infill and using existing infrastructure. And so that's a positive thing and something that we should apply. I remember at Earth Day this last year, we applauded them and said, wonderful job on your work on the general plan.
Yes.
So that's nice.
It is. It's a real positive. We're also hoping, of course, there's going to be major investment in public transportation, complete streets, where we can have bike lanes, which I know there's the first positives I've seen, and since I've been here in 1990 and I'm a bike rider, about bike lanes and being able to commute to work without getting splattered every day on the way in. So that's nice.
Yeah, this is Peace and Justice Connections, and we're talking with Dick Abood and Margo Praus about environmental stuff that's happening in Stockton. So Margo, what about what's the Sierra Club up to these days in terms of its meetings? I know that there's not really meetings; they're more social gatherings that have really some real smart informational pieces to them. And so, what's coming up in the next couple meetings?
Well, we have monthly general membership meetings, usually with a presentation.
And that's the fourth Monday?
It's usually the fourth Monday of the month. We do have some different times in there, but so in January, which
at the Fellowship Hall at Central Methodist Church.
It's at the in the fireplace room at Central Methodist Church.
Right.
It's at 3700 Pacific Avenue.
Yeah, right across from the UOP.
Yeah, right. And we just celebrated our annual environmental holiday gathering. That is our social event of the year, and it was just really quite nice. So.
Thanks to Margo.
Yeah, wonderful. Good job.
She's the events chairman.
Oh,
obviously.
Is she?
She does it all.
Oh,
she's not only that, she's the committee, the chair.
So, in other words, if you want an opportunity to help the environment, you can come join Sierra Club and take the burden off Margo.
That's right.
So, I mean,
I don't want to digress, but in terms of, we have about 800 members in this county, which is pretty good.
That's really
well
good.
Over 800 actually.
Yeah.
But and they're committed. They're wonderful people, but to get people involved and active is a totally different issue.
Yeah.
So
we know that in pretty much all of our work, all of our nonprofit work. It's difficult to get folks to take leadership and jump in. But once you start doing that, I mean, we've seen that with Earth Day or Peace and Justice Network or Connections or whatever, or whatever things we've been involved in. You meet the greatest people, you have the greatest time, you're working on something that's important. And you feel good at the end of the day, whereas a lot of times with your job you don't really have that. It's just you're doing what you want to do rather than doing what you have to do. So anyway, what's your next couple meetings about?
Our upcoming meetings are January 22nd, so that's Monday evening, 7 p.m. at the Central United Methodist Church. Yeah. We have Jim Murch coming to impersonate a Cornish miner from Bodie.
Oh wow! And Bodie is the ghost town up in the hills.
It is, and he comes with his authentic implements of the time, and he talks to people. And
I guess there's gold mining up there. I'm thinking.
The gold or silver?
Well, you have to find out. You have to come to the meeting and find out what the heck what is he digging.
Everybody better come and find out.
I'm on the edge of my seat, man.
All I know is he will also discuss some of the effects of mining and how we're still living with the toxins that stick around for a long time.
Right. When I'm I live in Valley Springs, and so I drive past like Milton and going down south to Highway 4, and there's just these piles of stones, and it's like, how did those things get there? Who placed those there? And it's like, well, the same reason that we don't have all of our soil is clay and there's nothing good there, and Stockton has really great soil is because Stockton has all of our soil. It got all placer mined, and so up in the foothills, you'll see scars of some, Carson Hill or some just in some side hill, you just see some really ugly scars of what happened and then in terms of the water that comes off of it. I mean, you could talk to Bill Jennings about the Penn mine and how that leached into Comanche and everything, but so I'd be interested to hear what he has to say about that.
You can come.
You said January 22nd, right?
That's January 22nd. It's a Monday evening.
Cool.
We do have a Saturday meeting in February on February 3rd from 12 to 2 in the same room. That's the fireside room at Central.
That's a Saturday?
That's a Saturday.
It's from 12 to 2, daytime
12
meeting.
to 2, that's a collaborative. So we're joining with the San Joaquin League of Women Voters as well as the Stockton Citizens Climate Lobby to bring a forum of speakers to talk about different ways that people are approaching efforts to transition away from fossil fuels. So,
because the state has a goal, right? I mean, isn't there some goal that we've that Schwarzenegger signed to cut greenhouse gases by? Was it 20? Is it 2020? Is it the same goal you're talking about?
By 2020, the level is 1990 levels by 2020.
Right, and then they're actually talking about cutting them even further. But
because more than a goal, we need to do this. Every time you hear something new about climate change. It makes it more urgently clear how much we need to do this now. I was at the UOP International Film Festival where they just last Saturday they hosted Al Gore's new film, The Inconvenient Sequel. It's just dynamic. It's just amazing. It's just impressive. it looked at solar production, and he looks at the whole world. He looked at Chile and the amount of, well, they go up 10%, 20% the next year, 30%, and this year they're skyrocketing in the amount of solar that they're actually installing in the country. So some places are making a difference.
Well, in California too. I mean, when I'm trolling for looking for articles for connections that would connect with what's happening locally, and just looking at more and more renewables are just are a lot more affordable and a lot more accessible than I think people would ever have imagined 10 years ago. I mean, it's just really taken off, and I think some of the reason is a lot of people are aware of the issue now, and also the cost has come way down, and so and even now that oil is fairly inexpensive, there's still strides of how California may meet its goal because of solar and wind.
It's possible.
Yeah.
If we would commit to it, it is possible.
Yeah.
We could transition fairly quickly
Yeah.
if we truly decided to do it.
Yeah,
now we have to guard against the utility companies assessing penalties on people that they encouraged solar to begin with, and then it was so popular.
Yeah.
Now they're alarmed at the extent of solar, and now they're
it's the same thing with water conservation, isn't it? I mean, the thing is if water companies encourage you to conserve, then you're not consuming as much water, and then you have to raise the price in order to keep to cover the fixed cost, and people just say, is this how I'm being rewarded for conserving? Yes. And so there has to be some sort of financial mechanism that makes that. I mean, that it seems illogical, but it may be that as more and more people have solar on their roofs, there has to be some sort of financial mechanism that can keep the utilities there as like a fallback, in the same way that oil is probably never going to not be used as a fuel, but in terms of certain times when you need emergency really fast fuel, the finances can be worked out. It's just we have to have the political will to do it, and it's not going to come. We know it's not going to come from the federal government. Because it's just listening to to just today, the national security assessment of our dear leader of President Trump was saying that that climate change is not a national security issue. In fact, if we wanted to be secure, we just have to pump more oil. And that's why this tax bill that they're pushing is going to open up the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil drilling and all that. So anyway, so the federal government is not going to be our leadership, but it'll have to come from the bottom up, which is what a democracy should be anyway.
Yeah. Well, it should be, but the federal government can put a lot of stopping posts in the way. The military, on the other hand, is very committed to addressing climate change as a national security issue, and they are working to protect their installations
infrastructure
everywhere.
Yeah, right, like piers and stuff that are going to be underwater.
Right, because they are on a lot of coastal areas.
Right.
So they need to deal with that, but they're also very involved in the R&D towards alternative energies.
Yeah.
So it's
well, and that's. I mean, normally there's not a whole lot of positive you can say about military spending, but the thing is, if you want to get, it seems like if you want to get environmental spending done in this country, on the federal level, you have to pitch it as a defense issue, and then the funding will flow.
Well, sometimes it will. Even so, Congress has been putting stopping points there too. They just don't allow it. So
that's right.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah.
I do want to say that Sierra Club really focused on Beyond Coal for the last 10 years.
Right.
They had a strong campaign to shut down coal energy produced by coal.
Yes.
And
it's been fairly successful. I understand that the coal industry employs 55,000 people, which is fewer than the number of people who work at Arby's fast food restaurant. So in terms of that industry, it's in its decline.
It is, but now the focus is on looking at 100% renewable. So that is the focus now. Stockton is looking at moving forward towards that. I know Mayor Tubbs is very committed to opportunities.
Wasn't there something out at the Rough and Ready Island? Wasn't there going to be some sort of I don't know. I read somewhere that there was going to be some sort of solar facility or something that was they had some space and they were going to designate it for something like that, but I don't know.
I haven't heard.
Yeah, but Mayor Tubbs is behind renewables.
He signed on to the climate action letter that mayors put forward before he was even inaugurated. So he's done well. And RTD, our local mass transit, really is committed to going 100% electric. So.
Yeah, so that's wonderful. I mean, and so people should take it, pat those folks on the back, and take a bus ride and talk and encourage our city leaders to keep on going. Because it's not going to come from the top down. It's going to come from us. It really, a lot of it has to do with how are we going? What sort of planet are we going to pass on to our posterity? Because they're young kids are there's just so many debts that young people are inheriting. I mean, there's student loan debt, and there's federal debt, and then there's just and this environmental debt that we're talking about and digging out of. That's essentially what global warming is. It's just something we have to work down. We have to stop. First, we have to stop digging. We have to stop adding to the carbon dioxide. And then we have to start figuring out ways to absorb what's out there now and just turn it around. And nobody's talking about turning it around. Right now we're just talking about stopping it. But the thing is that with what's happened with renewables in the last 10 years has been pretty remarkable. And I don't think people would have ever predicted that. And so who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 years. And we know it's not going to be federally led, but I don't know to what extent the federal government really leads anymore. It just pretty much follows. And so it's pretty much whatever we're pushing or whatever we're voting for is what they'll do. So you have to look at local elections and national elections and seeing what we can do to have folks who have an environmental voice. I don't know if McNerney has any environmental things that he's pushing, or I know Tom McClintock in our area has some issues.
McNerney's very committed to the environment. I know so Citizens Climate Lobby is a separate group in Stockton.
Is it a part of Sierra Club? Or
it
no?
is not.
Okay,
it is not.
And do they meet at a certain time?
They do. They meet every second Saturday at 9:30 right here at Peace and Justice.
231 Bedford Road in Stockton. Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So the climate change lobby?
They have a single focus, which is a carbon fee with the dividend distributed back to all households. And we've talked to him several times. He's committed to protecting the earth. He authored a bill in 2016 that would have followed that pathway, would have placed a fee on carbon.
Right. And then that's at the federal level, because he's
that's at the federal level.
Were there other people who were on that bill?
There were quite a few bills that year. This is a Republican Congress.
Sure. Yeah.
They did not move.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that these bills have to be introduced when the time is right. And the thing is, just because it doesn't move this year doesn't mean 2 years from now, when we might have a different Congress, that it will move then.
We do have a Climate Solutions Caucus, which in Congress, which is one Republican and one Democrat join at the same time. You can't, so there's no overabundance of either party.
I think I read about that in Connections.
I think you did. I think we put it in there.
Yeah, I think you did.
and that at least it's getting both sides talking.
Sure.
Which is
I mean, the thing is, it used to be environmentalism was a bipartisan issue. It wasn't about it wasn't a litmus test for how conservative you could be to how awful you could be to the environment. I mean, the EPA was formed by everybody knows it is formed by a Republican administration, and the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act and the toxics initiatives that happened in the early 70s all happened under a Republican presidential administration, either Nixon or Ford. And so those, and Earth Day pretty much was in 1970. The first one was then. And so, there was a groundswell of environmental activity because people believed that we had a common concern with, we did not want our rivers to catch fire. We did not want to have, lakes that we couldn't fish in or air that we couldn't breathe. And so everybody pitched in and said, we're gonna change this. And now we're getting to the point where we have a similar threat. It's just not as obvious as a river catching fire. And so, the climate change is very gradual. And but I think we witness the devastation every year, different outcomes from having increased energy poured into our environment and that energy having to go somewhere. It can be a fire, it can be a hurricane, it can be a tornado, it can be any sort of devastating, or just also changing where things grow or where water falls. So the whole environmental movement could be, is needing to be in a resurgent mode because this is a real important time for us.
And I think people are seeing that. I think the memberships of various environmental groups has grown significantly since Donald Trump was elected president.
Yeah.
And
people are concerned.
People are very concerned, and rightfully so.
Right.
And even talk to a lot of Republicans, and they around here.
Yeah.
And they will say,
yeah,
I do believe in climate change.
Yeah.
I do believe it's real.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah,
they don't do anything
right
that's going to offend their party. So
that's
they keep going. But there's still a lot of people. I went to the Midwest this summer. I grew up in Nebraska. So I visited some of my farming relatives who say, yes, we believe in climate change, or climate change is real, but we don't believe it's man-made.
Well,
so you're right back and go, oh, no,
I see.
It's happening, but it's not man's fault.
I see. We're just going to try to, yeah, we're going to start.
A lot of propaganda on that.
Well, the thing is, you don't start looking around at who started the fire. You try to put it out, right? Anyway, this is Peace and Justice Connections. We're talking this evening with Dick Abood and Margo Praus about climate change and environmental stuff in and around California and the local area. And so, anything else that Sierra Club is up to?
Well, I want to finish my meeting. So the February, so our the fourth Monday in February, so which is February, is that 26th? 26th. Okay. We have University of Pacific is fortunate that it has the collections of John Muir, who is the founder of Sierra Club, and Mike Wirtz is the curator there, and he will be coming to talk about John Muir and the big trees.
Oh, wonderful!
So he's quite interesting. He gets some of the details that we've never heard before about what went on in those days, and we're looking forward to it.
He's an excellent speaker. He's very entertaining. So people should come and hear him. It's really good.
And if people want to go up and visit the big trees, it's a wonderful time. I just went up there with the last the Calaveras big trees. I think you might be talking about.
I love that place.
And so it's just outside of Arnold if you're going up Highway 4, and it's me and my daughter and my wife. We went hiking there in the South Grove. It was beautiful as normal, and it was really uncrowded on a weekday, but I'm sure it's generally not crowded at all. It's really a wonderful park, and it's just worth going to. It's a treasure. So
it's awesome, and as are much of the Sierras. So.
Indeed, yeah, and you can just keep on going up from there and check out Ebbets. Well, the road is closed at Ebbets Pass right now, but still, it's very, very pretty. So yeah, and so that sort of brings us to what page 4 in Connections was this last issue was talking about Tom McClintock's claims about how our national forests are being poorly run by the Forest Service, and what we need to treat them more the way that, like, say, Sierra Pacific Industries (SPI) operates their their lands, which is more clear cutting and planting, putting in plantation forest, plantation trees, so that they can cut them all at one time and make more money that way. So anyway, so the nice this is a nice article from John Buckley up at CSERC, Central Sierra Environmental Resources. Yeah. Environmental resources. But in any case, it's a great article. It talks about how it just sort of refutes a lot of the things that Tom McClintock sort of just glibly says about how how the forests are mismanaged, and that's why we have such catastrophic fires right now. And it is true that if some of the understory were cut down and were didn't add for fuels for the large fires we had, we would have fewer huge fires. But the situation is that chopping out that understory is going to cost a lot of money. It's not going to make money for the logging companies, and the logging companies aren't going to go in there and do it unless it's profitable. Mm-hmm. And so what logging companies will do is they'll go in and they'll chop down the nice big trees along with the small trees, and they'll chop down everything and then just replant essentially a crop. Rather than going in and selectively taking the understory out and cleaning it up so that the forest isn't as susceptible to huge fires. And so anyway, the article is really good in terms of refuting that and talking about how if the Forest Service were given more resources to actually manage the forest the way they think they should. They could do the job, but the problem is that the Forest Service has never been given enough resources to do this, and so anyway, it's an interesting article because a lot of us treasure wilderness and don't like to think of having to manage our forests like we would manage Oak Park or something, mm-hmm. But still. If a selective management around either structures or in certain areas would keep a huge fire, like the Thomas Fire now, or like Butte Fire, or like Rim Fire, or any huge horrible fire that we've had, from becoming the catastrophe that they have. So.
Well, it's interesting because I've heard the argument that McClintock makes about the environmental movement being to blame for these fires because they wouldn't allow the cutting and carrying to take place. Right. And I've heard that from both Republicans and Democrats. It's now wait a minute, time out. Let's look at this seriously. You need to have the thoughtful approach to how to cut trees because the environmental movement has never advocated do nothing.
Right, and it should be science-based. It should be based on rather mm-hmm. than profit-based. Because mm-hmm. I think what a lot of folks look at the rural areas and say, oh, we need jobs. We need jobs mm-hmm. at any cost. Mm-hmm. And so chopping down these trees, that's the way we've always done it. Well, mm-hmm. The thing is, once they're gone, they're gone. And and you just visit big trees and you see what happens when you retain them. It's mm-hmm. beautiful. Mm-hmm. But then if you just go up Highway 4 and just take one of those side roads and just like any one of the forest roads that go into the forest and you go away from the beauty strip, which is the strip of trees that you see as you go down the highway, and people think, oh, the forest is just beautiful. Just take one of those dirt roads off and just take a look, and you'll see clear cuts like you've never seen before. In fact, if you want to Google that area and look at the Google Earth type of situation and look around Arnold and that sort of thing, you'll just see a patchwork. It just looks like it's just like these little barren. There's tons of barren dots, and this is the model that McClintock would use to say. This is the way SPI works, because the thing about Calaveras County is it is, and I live in Calaveras County, is that there's not as much national forest land in Calaveras County as there is in Amador or Tuolumne County. So it's a lot more private land, and that private land is pretty much owned by Sierra Pacific, which is like the largest landowner in the state of California. And so and it's mostly all forest land, but and just Google around the town of Arnold and pull back and take a look at that, and you'll just be shocked at the destruction and the clear cutting that's happened, and that would be the model that folks like Tom McClintock throw out at us.
And it's so sad because the politicians make these claims, but like you said, where's the science?
Yeah.
And they just make. You saw it today. I saw an article in the Sacramento Bee. Our air is too clean.
Yeah.
Our air is too clean. That is causing kids to be sick.
It's in here too.
Is it in there?
Yeah,
okay. I couldn't.
Yeah.
You just want to strangle somebody.
The reason why it's too clean is because people who grow up on farms around dust and pollen and stuff, they're healthier because they're able to fend off disease, I guess, because their lungs are more clogged or something. but anyway, and that's one thing that came out of this article that really struck me was not only just John Rightwell, but also he comes at these issues from science space and has been for years and has been a stalwart person up there in Sonora to look at the watershed that we all pretty much share. And
that's a banned word now, isn't it?
Watershed?
No, science.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You saw the banned words.
Right. That's right.
Who was the agency?
That the EPA or HH?
I can't remember. Now I just forgot the agency.
HHS.
Then they were told there are 7 banned words in science.
Like George Carlin or something.
It's federal. No, the federal government.
I know. It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah, I mean, it would be humorous if it weren't so sad. I mean, because it's people know this stuff. I mean, it's not like one problem that sort of ominous things that are happening media wise is that we see that if these lies that come out, if they are just constantly repeated by Sinclair Corporation, which is going to buy local broadcasting, or Fox News, which is now getting rid of its content to Disney and is now going to be freed up to buying more local stations, you may end up finding just the only the TV stations that only information that comes out is going to be not saying these 7 words and never saying the climate change is a security threat, because it's not going to be politically correct. Right. And then on top of that, we look at the new internet, the net neutrality change, so that now what could happen is the 4 companies that control internet, the broadband, can now slow up or just even stop information from getting to your computer, so that you won't get the information that is so important. So that's why this radio station is so darn important. But also outlets like Connections, and you just have to keep on looking and not worry about the slow response speed on your ISP for what you're looking for. Truth Out and Reader Supported News and Common Dreams, and also Sierra Club. Sierra Club, you have a great website. And it's and your newsletter is great. The thing is that really joining in with Sierra Club, it's a great local organization. It has a history of doing great things. I remember Eric Parfrey being a contributor to Connections for a really long time, and he's just still, to me, the expert on planning in this area. He knows this town backwards and forwards, and knows the issues backwards and forwards, and that's Sierra Club, and. So joining the Sierra Club and coming to one of their monthly meetings is just a wonderful thing, because it's not just you're sitting around and watching them, motion second past, next issue. It's it's interesting.
We have programs.
You have programs. And really nice people.
They're interesting programs.
Yeah, and
there's refreshments.
And there you go, refreshments. That's good. So anyway, this is Peace and Justice Connections. We're talking with Dick Abood and Margo Praus about climate issues. And, it would be remiss if we didn't is there anything else that's happening locally in terms of Sierra Club meetings? That there's the February 26th one you said that's talking about the big trees and John Muir's legacy. Yeah.
March 26th will be Elaine Gorman from the Sonora area, who will talk about service outings. She's a volunteer on a lot of the Sierra Club service outings, where they go to different areas. People actually pay to take a vacation to certain areas to help work on eliminating invasive species, weeds, creating pathways, doing all kinds of things. And she's going to talk about how exciting that is and why people actually pay to work.
Yeah. I mean, we went backpacking this last year and just stumbled across some CCC people who were just repairing the trail, and it was just so, I'd never seen that before. It was like a group of seven young folks who were just like working really hard. I mean, like moving these huge rocks without any machines or anything. And it was really nice because when you go hiking in the back trails, you wonder, well, how the heck did these trails get made? Because there's like switchbacks, there's drains, there's all sorts of stuff, and it's beautiful, wonderful weather, and so hopefully she can recruit some folks to do that stuff.
Yeah, we'll see. And then there's always Earth Day.
That
we participate in.
April 22nd this year on a Sunday. Yeah, it'll be the 30th annual.
Oh, great.
So I've been involved in Earth Day from off and on, and so it is a great day. It's out at Victory Park. It is from 11 to 4, and it's always been free admission. There's about 70 or 80 booths out there. A lot of informational stuff. It's a family-friendly event, so you learn a lot of things. There's people get a lot of free stuff too, bags and things like this, but frisbees and stuff. But you learn a lot of stuff about what's happening locally. You learn about environmental groups that you can join with. You get sort of inspired to do some environmental work. There's great entertainment, great local entertainment on stage all day through. There's vegetarian food that you can eat lower on the food chain and learn that it's not that it won't kill you, and that maybe eating lower on the food chain one day a week is something you can do. And so and that's so anyway, April 22nd out at Victory Park in Stockton. That's on Pershing and Acacia or something, and it's always been a great event. It's always been a lot of fun. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for mentioning that. Yeah. So there's also, and I don't know to what extent, I mean, I ask you guys how important you think it is for a president to be either a leader in environmental issues, or to be somebody who is either neutral or somebody like this person who is actively hostile. What do you think is the outcome from that? Does it make a difference?
I think it does.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, prior to our current president, I really didn't know a president could do so much damage in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
But he seems to be accomplishing that.
Yeah.
And it's admirable that we have
institutions.
I want to be in California. I mean, it's admirable we have a state like California. Yeah. And really the West Coast that's leading the way anyway, and we're not deterred by him.
Right.
We're just doing what we're doing. It's not it is affecting us because there's money issues.
Right.
There's research issues.
There'll be tax
They're
credits,
withholding
things like that.
dollars, the new tax law. I mean, there's undercurrents.
Yeah. We
that
talk
are
about
flowing
drilling
against you.
Talking about drilling in places.
That's right.
We're talking about
nature, and that's
cutting
irreplaceable.
cutting back on national monuments.
Yeah, and that's destruction that can maybe never be fixed.
Yeah.
So it's
the regulations that he's so insistent on cutting. If you had substitute the word protections for the word regulation, you can hear what he's doing.
He's eliminating protections.
He's eliminating protections. The regulations were put in place in order to protect us and people from something in particular, and we'll just get rid of it.
You know what he's doing that makes me so mad? Is we have to work so damn much harder to overcome all this.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to do. You just have to work much harder and put that much more energy into doing something that's right.
Yeah.
Because of what he's doing.
Yeah.
So he may not slow us down irreparably or that bad.
Yeah.
It's going to require a lot more people to put a lot more work into it.
That's right. Yeah, a lot more energy.
Yeah.
You would think that as people see more and more what's happening, they will change. And we do have every 2 years we have an election, And so, and they, as they say, elections have consequences, even though this last one, the person in the office did not win the popular vote. And, if the number of votes had changed that would fill, I think, University of Michigan's football stadium, if those votes had changed, we'd have a different president. So, but yet this person seems to take what he won as a mandate to do all sorts of destruction. And, like I mentioned before about the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, I mean, that's just sort of a one-off, just throwing something to Murkowski so that she'll vote for this bill. And so, something that is a very important environmental issue that has been fought for the last 30 years since, Carter signed in the Wilderness Act up there. And now it's just part of it's just like some sort of trinket on a Christmas tree for a tax bill, on top of the getting rid of the individual mandate for health care and getting rid of all sorts of restrictions on income. It's just remarkable, and they're calling this a victory.
It is so harmful to people. It is so harmful to people, and for the benefit of
very few
top corporations. It doesn't. None of it makes sense other than, yes, they want to make money. They want to make more money.
And they keep framing it in terms of this is good for the people.
Yeah.
This is all good for the people. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah. And for the middle class,
for the corporate people.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And of course,
corporations.
Of course, we know that corporations are people.
Yeah. Corporations are people.
Indeed. So anyway, I think we're. Is there anything more that we can mention about Sierra Club, about your meetings that happen on every fourth Monday over at 3700 Pacific Avenue, across the street from UOP?
No, I think people just have to go and see for themselves.
Please. Yeah,
yes.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, well, good. So then we can wrap this up. This is Peace and Justice Connections, talking about climate change and Sierra Club issues with Margo Praus and Dick Abood. Thanks to you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.